So hello everyone and welcome to one of our nutrition webinars called Healthy Eating for Your Heart Starts in Your Gut. I'm Michele MacDonald Werstuck and I'm a registered dietitian with the Hamilton Family Health Team, and I'm joined by my colleague Anastasia.
And I'm Anastasia Bigas, and I'm also a dietitian with the Hamilton Family Health Team.
Yes, so we're very happy to be here today to share some information with you. We've been getting lots of interest from people during COVID on topics that are related to different nutrition topics. And so we have created a series of different webinars, and this is our third webinar on healthy eating for your heart. And this time we're going to talk a little bit about the heart, brain, and gut connection. Okay. I'm not getting it. Oh, there we go. Okay. So in terms of heart health, it's always a priority to take care of your heart health. And during COVID, this has been an unusual time, and many of us are home and our work situation might have changed, but we all want to make sure that we're giving you information that you can use at this time to stay healthy at home. Because we know that heart health continues to be a significant health issue, and we know that what you eat and the lifestyle strategies you use can actually go a very long way to reducing your risk of cardiovascular disease. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the role of the gut in terms of heart health, which may be a bit surprising to people to realize that what's happening in our intestinal tract may in fact impact many of our health systems in the body, including our vascular system. So we're going to talk today about the gut's role in digestion, immunity, heart health, and more. We're going to talk specifically about some of the fibers that are very valuable at not only helping with digestion, but also can improve your blood pressure and your cholesterol and can reduce your overall risk of heart attack and stroke. We're going to talk about some of the specific fibers to try to add to your daily routine, and then also some general information about how can we make sure we get healthy bacteria in our gut, and how can we make sure we have the right kind and there's enough there working for us. So here's a picture of our gut, which is quite a long system. And again, when it comes to things like the microbiome, this is a term that you might hear about. Microbiome refers to this sort of intestinal ecosystem that includes a variety of different gut flora, so microbiota, so different bacteria, different viruses, fungi that make up this milieu within our intestine. So we're going to talk a little bit today about also immunity and how what's happening in your gut can actually be impacting on the immune function of the body, as well as on mood. So that's another interesting topic. We have another webinar that talks about food and mood and talks a little bit more about this. So here's a great graphic that really shows how our GI tract is really our second brain, and that within our gut, there's trillions of bacteria and microorganisms and really work together with other systems in the body. So 70% of our body's immune system can actually be found in our digestive tract. And this bacteria and the microbiota that's in the GI tract not only help balance good and bad bacteria, but they also create substances that are very important for body function. So they help us with digestion, but they also help with different chemical reactions in the body. And so there is this real balance between good bacteria versus bad bacteria. And there's many, many, many different species of actual different bacteria and viruses, as well as some of the fungi in the gut. And there's a lot of research actually looking at and trying to understand what is this microbiome, and how can we understand how it works and how can we manipulate it to improve our health. So when we talk about the gut, some of the comments we get from our patients is they're quite concerned about some of the symptoms that will happen if they start to add more fibers and things like that. And many of us here are patients complaining of issues of excessive gas and bloating, wondering if they need to eliminate certain foods, wondering if they need to follow special diets. Well, the good news is gas and bloating and burping are quite common and normal. So as we speak and as we eat, we actually swallow air, and that air moves through the GI tract and is released at the other end. So half of the released air is actually swallowed air. So how we eat and what we eat can make more air or less air, as well as what we drink, as well as some of the medications and supplements we might take can actually make us either swallow more air or produce more gas compounds and lead to a little bit more bloating. So the good news is there's a lot of strategies that we can do with what you eat, how you eat, and how that can impact on the gas or bloating that you experience. So for example, certain foods we know can be a little bit gassy, things like broccoli. So raw broccoli can be quite gassy, but if you cook broccoli and have a smaller amount of it, say in a soup, for example, you may find that there's much less gas and bloating associated with that food. So there's many strategies that we can help you as dietitians, help you learn how to manage these symptoms and reduce some of the gas and bloating you might be experiencing. So we do really encourage you to not withdraw a lot of foods from your diet, but speak with your dietitian if you have a dietitian in your family doctor's office, because there's a lot of things we can help you with, and that'll still make sure that you're getting the foods and nutrients that you need to stay healthy. So here's a question for you. Is this a myth or a fact? I don't need high fiber foods if I'm already going regularly. So many times when I'm talking to someone about lowering their cholesterol or improving their blood pressure by adding certain fibers, they always say to me, well, I'm fine. I don't need any more fiber because my bowels are quite regular. And what people don't realize is that fiber does more than just help your bowels. Fiber is very important for helping prevent constipation, of course, but it also is a very good strategy to improve blood sugars after you eat a meal. It can lower your LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol. It also helps you stay full and feel fuller longer, so it helps with managing portion control and food choices. And in addition, fiber is actually a prebiotic. So a prebiotic is, in this case, fiber is a substance that actually promotes the growth of healthy bacteria. So helps to build that healthy microbiome that we've talked about. And so fiber is a very important strategy for so much more than just digestion. It really seems to help many other health conditions that many of us are struggling with, as well as mental health too. And when it comes to fibers, certain fibers seem to have more evidence of benefit of lowering things like your cholesterol. So there's two types of fiber in the foods we eat. There's insoluble fiber and there's soluble fiber. So this soluble fiber is more your gel-like, pectin-like fibers. Think of a bowl of oatmeal, for example, and the gooiness of an oatmeal. That's more of a soluble fiber. And newer research is showing we need about 20 to 25 grams of this soluble fiber every day to actually change things like lowering your LDL cholesterol. And adding that fiber, we can lower LDL cholesterol 10 to 15%, which is very significant when it comes to lowering cholesterol. So which foods give us soluble fiber? Well, the foods that we normally think of for fiber are vegetables and our fruits, our whole grains, our beans, peas, lentils, nuts, and seeds. These are all foods that are fabulous for us. They give us both insoluble and soluble fiber. What we want to do, though, to lower your LDL cholesterol is to help focus a little bit more on the soluble fiber foods. But then again, people will say, oh no, if I add more fiber to my diet, I'll get diarrhea for sure, and I'm going to feel even more uncomfortable. Again, good news, the right kind of fiber can help manage those symptoms and you won't experience that uncomfortable gas and uncomfortable feeling. So the question is, what type of fiber are you getting? Are you getting enough of the soluble fiber? And how can we slowly begin to increase it in your usual eating patterns so that you're comfortable with that? So here's a test for you. Here's 3 meals, and we want you to take a look and take a minute to have a peek to see which of these meals do you think is higher in soluble fiber. Is it the tuna sandwich with chips, pickles, and olives for eyes? Very creative. Is it the chicken with rice and a naan or pita bread? Or is it our whole wheat bread with our ham sandwich with some grapes and carrot sticks and celery? Oops. Well, in fact, it is our whole wheat sandwich with our grapes and carrots and celery sticks. They have more of this soluble fiber because that type of bread is actually more of a rye type of a bread, which is very beneficial for soluble fiber. Now, the sandwich with the chip meal also has fiber in the bread, and there's a little bit of lettuce there too, but the chips overall don't have a lot of fiber. So whenever you have that opportunity to have a meal where you can add a vegetable or a fruit, like in the case of the carrots or the grapes, you're adding some fiber to that meal. Again, with the chicken meal and rice, you can see up there, there's not a lot of vegetable sources. So that is one of the reasons why that meal is quite low in fiber overall, but particularly low in soluble fiber. So here's a myth or truth for you. So speaking of bread, there's many, many different kinds of breads out there. So rye or pumpernickel bread is more effective at lowering LDL cholesterol than whole wheat. Do you think that's true, or do you think that's a myth? Well, in fact, for those of you who think it's true, you're correct. Rye bread actually is a very good soluble fiber component to it, and it takes much longer to chew, longer to digest, and tends to form that gel that we were talking about in the intestine that traps bile. So bile is released when you're eating fats, and it helps digest fat, and it has a lot of cholesterol. So if you have a lot of fiber in the intestine at the same time, it will tend to trap the bile, and when you have a bowel movement, you'll actually excrete some of the cholesterol that way, and this way your overall blood cholesterol levels go down. Now here's another myth or truth for you, Metamucil. So many of us have heard of this product. It's been around for quite a long time. Can Metamucil taken every night lower your LDL cholesterol and improve your blood sugars? And in fact, it can. So this product has been used forever for helping with constipation, but the same gel that it forms within the intestine is the gel that actually traps, again, the bile that has a lot of LDL cholesterol. So this psyllium powder is a very effective ingredient for trapping and lowering cholesterol. So taking Metamucil every night before bed is one trick. Some people will use psyllium powder that you can buy at the health food store, again, mixing it with water, and that can lower cholesterol, as well as, oh, true, there we go. I'm giving away too many answers already. So here's another myth or truth for you. So there's a cereal out there from Kellogg's called All Bran Buds. Does it have added psyllium fiber? Well, I've sort of given away the answer. Yes, it does. So this is a cereal that many of the dietitians recommend because it's one of the only ones out there that has psyllium powder. And again, the psyllium powder has that benefit on forming that gel that will lower the LDL cholesterol as well as improve blood sugar. So if you're using All Bran Buds as a daily supplement, you'd want to be using at least 3 to 5 tablespoons to add daily to some of your foods. So that could be cereal, that could be yogurt, that could be sprinkled on other foods, really your choice. This is very versatile cereal. You can actually cook with it as well. So if you're making banana bread or zucchini loaf, you can add it in your recipe. So very little taste to this. It hides very well in other foods, and another way to get psyllium in your diet. So what about other products you might have heard about? Flaxseed and chia, do they have soluble fiber as well? Well, in fact, they do. So flaxseed and chia seeds, both are seeds, and there's pictures here. And when you mill flaxseed, you can actually use it as a supplement. So many people will buy ground or milled flaxseed, and every day take 2 or 3 teaspoons, again, in yogurt, on cereal. It's a great little way to add some flavor. It bakes quite nicely. So if you're liking to bake homemade oatmeal cookies, for example, baking seems to be quite popular right now during COVID. Homemade cookies are a great way to add more fiber, and yet people enjoy them tremendously even with the added fiber. So adding flaxseed to your recipes is a great idea. Chia, again, another seed, quite a good fiber. That can be added to different things as well. A lot of people will throw chia in smoothies, for example, or in their yogurt, making chia pudding. There's some great recipes on chia. If you're looking for recipe ideas, you can always go to the Dietitians of Canada app called www.cookspiration.com. They have lots of recipes in there on chia. So another myth or truth for you. What about salads? So a lot of people, when they're thinking about getting healthier, they immediately turn to salads. Are they a good idea though? Do they give you a good source of fiber? Can salads provide fiber to settle down your gut symptoms and lower your cholesterol? Well, this in fact is a myth, especially a salad like this, which has very little fiber. It really is just leafy greens, which are quite low in fiber, high in vitamins and minerals, but actually low in fiber. So if you were going to have a salad, we actually would want you to build up that salad. We would want you to add things like vegetables that have extra fiber, like broccoli or cauliflower. Maybe throw some chickpeas on top. Maybe sprinkle some sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds on top. So really build up those salads so that they have good fiber sources in them, so they do give you enough fiber. And lastly, I'm going to finish here with one of my favorite handouts called Facts on Soluble Fiber. So it's a 2-page handout that we use a lot in our counseling with our patients, and it gives a really nice summary of the foods that are rich in this soluble fiber. So again, we're trying to shoot for that 20 to 25 grams a day of soluble fiber. So this gives a nice little summary chart. So if you are interested in receiving this, please let us know. We're happy to send it out to you. We'd also encourage you to connect with your dietitians in the offices. They're happy to get this resource to you as well. So on that note, I'll turn it over to you, Anastasia.
All right, so thinking about fiber and how do we get more of that into our day? As Michele was mentioning, we can use things like the whole grains, and if we think about the new Canada's Food Guide, this can help to guide us as to how we can include more of that fiber. So the whole grains, which means things like whole wheat pasta, wild rice, brown rice, barley, whole grain bread, oats, all of those things are really good sources of fiber. And then if we focus on plant proteins, so things like kidney beans, chickpeas, lentils, navy beans, pinto beans, fava beans, those are also really, really high sources of fiber. So they're really good options, as well as your nuts and seeds. And then, of course, as Michele was saying, those fruits and vegetables as well. We want half a plate there, but as she was also mentioning, was that some of the, a lot of the vegetables tend to have smaller amounts of fiber. So you're not necessarily going to meet your fiber needs just by eating those fruits and vegetables. We definitely want them there in our day, but if we focus only on those foods to help us meet our fiber needs, they can only take us so far. So thinking about the other higher fiber options, which would be, again, those whole grains and those other plant proteins. So not only rounding out your plate with those foods, but also they're a great source of fiber for us. Another myth or fact: is multigrain the same thing as whole grain? And actually, this is a myth, I think. Yes. So multi-grain products often do have different types of grains in them, but they're not necessarily always going to be whole grains. And when we think about fiber, we want to be choosing whole grains as much as possible, because the whole grains mean that the fiber is already there, or is still there. It hasn't been processed out. So I mentioned some whole grains from the previous slide, and the thing to be looking for on a label when we're wanting whole grains is that fiber number. So the first thing you want to look for on the label is, what is the serving size? Now this is really important because the serving size is different depending on what you're choosing. So if you're choosing cereal, the serving size might be 1 cup, or it might be half a cup. That would depend on the manufacturer. If you're choosing crackers, it might be for 6 crackers or for 10 crackers. If you're choosing bread, it could be for 1 slice of bread, for 2 slices of bread. It really does depend on what it is you're choosing and then what the manufacturer is deciding is a serving. Then, of course, you have to think about how much are you eating. So if the serving size is for 1 cup, but you only eat half a cup, then you need to adjust those numbers. So for this particular product that we're showing you, it's saying that a serving size is 1 cup's worth of food. And the fiber that you're getting out of this particular food is 6 grams, which is considered to be a very high source of fiber. If it had 4 grams of fiber, then it would be considered to be a high source of fiber. And if it's 2 grams of fiber, then it's considered to be a source of fiber. And so as Michele was saying, we want at least that 20 grams or more of fiber per day. And so you want to be choosing those higher sources of fiber because it will help you get there more quickly. Another thing you might notice on this label was that Michele was talking about soluble fiber, but when we look at the label here, it says dietary fiber. And unfortunately, as Michele mentioned earlier, there is both soluble and insoluble fiber, but on the label, they don't necessarily need to spell them out like that. Some products certainly do, but the majority don't, and by law, they don't need to put that out. All they need to put is a total fiber. So I really do encourage you to look for that fiber number. Don't get too caught up in the fact that I don't see a soluble fiber or an insoluble fiber number. If it's higher in fiber, it's going to have both of those fibers in it. So really looking for those higher fiber choices whenever you can. Another myth or fact. So by the time you feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated. And this in fact is true, it's a fact. When people are mildly dehydrated, this can definitely have a negative impact on our mood. We might feel irritable, we might feel a bit lethargic. So we want to stay well hydrated throughout the day as much as possible. Everyone's needs are a little different, but for most people, anywhere from 6 cups to 8 cups of water a day is a really good starting point. And of course, when we think about being dehydrated or staying hydrated, all fluids count. But water, we do encourage you to make that your beverage of choice. So how can you tell when you need more water or fluids? Well, when you're already dehydrated, it's kind of gone beyond that point, right? You're probably feeling really thirsty. You could drink like a whole bunch of water really quickly because you're rehydrating. So we don't want to wait until you get to that point. What you want to be doing is sipping on water through the day in order to prevent you actually getting to the point where you're dehydrated. And what do we want to drink? So as I mentioned, water is going to be our beverage of choice. Whenever possible, if you can focus on that, that's your best option. Some people don't like plain water, so fizzy water is also, bubbly fizzy water is also fine. Or if you add some lemon to it, some cucumbers, some mint, that can also spice it up a little bit so that you've got a bit of a different flavor. So if you can choose the water, that's the one that you should be focusing on. Milk, as long as it's plain, is also a really good choice. Definitely counts a bit towards your fluid needs, so absolutely including that one. And then other unsweetened beverages would be things like soy beverage, almond beverage, as well as things like our coffees and our teas, but remembering what is actually going into that coffee or tea. So sometimes there can be a lot of sugar or a lot of milk or cream, which can make them not as good choices as if they were, as compared to the plain choices. And then what do we want to limit that we're drinking? Definitely our sweet drinks. So pops, juices, any kind of alcohol we want to keep to a minimum. Things like hot chocolates, flavored coffees, flavored teas, those things as well. That extra flavoring is usually just extra sugar, so we want to keep those to a minimum as well. And then thinking about things that have caffeine in them, so not just your coffee or your teas, but some energy drinks, some of those other pops out there also have caffeine. So we want to limit that as much as possible. It's okay to be including some caffeine in our day, so 1 or 2 cups of coffee or tea a day is reasonable, but more than that, and caffeine can certainly have a negative impact. So we just want to minimize those things. And what about sugar? As I mentioned in the last slide, we want to be choosing water because we want to be minimizing those drinks that have those extra added sugars to them. So water is going to be your best choice because it has nothing there. When we look at other drinks, if we think about chocolate milk, a cup of chocolate milk actually has an extra 28 grams of sugar, or 7 teaspoons worth of sugar in it, as compared to plain white milk. So the white milk is a great option, but you want to be minimizing that chocolate milk whenever possible and choosing the white instead. A can of pop actually has 42 grams of sugar, or the equivalent of 10.5 teaspoons. So that's quite a bit extra in there. So for some people, diet pop might be an okay answer as opposed to the regular, but really we still get that kind of that sweet hit when we're having the diet pop, and it might not be so good for the bacteria in our gut either, so we want to be minimizing that. So if you can choose water, that's going to be your better option. When it comes to coffee, as I mentioned, coffee or tea are okay, but it's how much sugar is going in those. So a double-double can have about 24 grams of sugar, which is the equivalent of about 6 teaspoons. If it's only 1 coffee a day, maybe I'm not so worried about that, but some people do have more than that in their day, and the sugar can quickly add up, not just from the coffee, but from other foods and other drinks that we're choosing. Does caffeine affect my gut? Is this a myth or a fact? Well, it is actually true. Some people do enjoy coffee in the morning to help them pick me up or to help get them stay alert or wake them up. But too much caffeine in our day can actually make symptoms of anxiety worse, and it can definitely affect our bowels and our bladder. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not just the coffee and the tea. Things like those energy drinks, those pops, they also have caffeine in them, as well as some foods like chocolate would also have caffeine there. So a little bit of caffeine in the day is fine, but more than that, and we do really want to minimize how much we're getting in our day. Another myth or truth. So recent research identifies the importance of healthy gut bacteria to help us manage symptoms of gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, and to help lower cholesterol. And this one is true. Probiotics go way beyond just our digestive health. They can certainly affect heart health, they can affect mood, but it's important to remember that not all probiotics do the same thing. So the particular brand of probiotic that you're choosing is really important. We'll get to that in just a minute. There is also no evidence that more probiotics are better. So is a product with 10 billion probiotics better for you than a product with 1 billion probiotics? Not necessarily. There are some probiotics that compete with one another, so we want to be careful about what we're choosing, and definitely the strain of the probiotic is really important. So all of these things, when we're considering them, that is when we want to go to our handy chart, probioticchart.ca, and this is actually a tool that's been developed by one of our family health team, Hamilton Family Health Team, pharmacists who happens to have an interest in this area, and it does get updated regularly, certainly yearly, if not more often than that, depending on which new products are out there. It's available for everyone to use, so it's something that we certainly use as a tool because it's updated regularly and it shows the evidence of studies on certain probiotics. So if we think about our pretend patient, we've got a 55-year-old woman who is complaining about severe diarrhea and gut pain. And we notice when we're speaking with her or reviewing her chart that she was treated with antibiotics about 2 weeks, for about 2 weeks, a month ago, because she had an infection. So that infection has since cleared up, but she still has these other symptoms, this diarrhea, this gut pain. And she heard that eating yogurt might help her with this. And she's wondering what kind to get. Well, 4 potential options. One is that you can just have any kind of yogurt because they all have probiotics. Or you could do an Activia yogurt, or you could try perhaps a Optimal yogurt or a Yogo, or we could do Dan Active. And so what would be the answer there? Well, we're going to see that the actual answer is Dan Active. And how did we get to that? Well, we looked at our handy probioticchart.ca. So the first thing just to think about is that yogurt, yes, all yogurt is made using bacteria, but that doesn't mean that all yogurts have probiotics. So just picking up a yogurt off the shelf does not mean that it will have probiotics in them. Certain types of yogurts do actually have probiotics added. So if we look at our chart, we'll see that Activia comes up as a yogurt that does have added probiotics. But if we look at what it's helpful for, it's actually not helpful for her condition. It's more so helpful for constipation and for irritable bowel syndrome. And so for that reason, we wouldn't recommend Activia yogurt to this particular woman. The other options were Yogo and Optimal, and they don't appear on our list, which means that they don't have anything that would be helpful for her. And then the last one was the Dan Active, which is what we chose. And if we look at why we chose it, we can see that Dan Active in particular has been shown to be helpful with antibiotic-associated diarrhea. So that's why we chose it for this particular woman and recommended it to her. So it is important to look at, when we're thinking about probiotics, look at what evidence there is for certain products. This particular guide, as I said, is great because it gets updated regularly. It also talks about not just foods that are out there with probiotics that have research behind them, but it also looks at different supplements that are available, as well as looking at whether they're useful for adults or for kids or for women specifically. So it really is a great resource that we're very fortunate to have, and that's available to everyone because it is just on the internet for all to use. So in summary, we want higher fiber foods because they help with our heart health. We're looking at things like fruits and vegetables, as well as those legumes, kidney beans, chickpeas, lentils, and then those other plant proteins like the nuts and seeds. Whole grains are also going to be a big contributor, as well as specific foods like chia, ground flaxseed, as well as psyllium. And we do want to be aiming for at least that 20 grams or more of soluble fiber every single day. So think about all the things that we've talked about, because we've given you lots of different options as to how you might be able to get more fiber into your day. So we encourage you to think about how you might be able to include more fiber in a way that makes sense to you, and of course include more fluid as well. So part of what can happen if you have too much fiber too fast is that it can make you uncomfortable and it can cause constipation, and we don't want that. So when you are adding more fiber, you want to do it gradually and slowly, and you want to also make sure you're including enough fluid to prevent those uncomfortable feelings from happening. I tell people, think about one meal. Look at how much fiber you're getting at that one meal and how much more can you include, and then start doing that for each meal in your day, so that overall in your day, you can include you can increase your total fiber amount. So think about how you might be able to include that for yourself. And of course, remembering that it doesn't necessarily take a lot of big things that you need to focus on. Even small things, once they're added up all together, they can make a huge difference. So something as adding more fruit to your day. In this particular example, adding half a cup of blueberries to my cereal 3 days each week. It's something that's small, something that's hopefully sustainable, and work on that, and then perhaps you get to the point where you can have more fruit 4 days a week, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, so that you're slowly increasing that. Another option here would be the psyllium fiber each day by using specifically those Kellogg's All Brand buds. And as Michele was saying, they can be included in lots of different types of foods. You can add them to your yogurt, you can add them to oatmeal, you can add them to other cold cereals, you can add them in baking. So there's lots of ways to get those in there as well. If you have any other questions, we do certainly encourage you to call your doctor's office to book an appointment with either your dietitian if you have one available, or even with your family doctor if there's no dietitian available there for you. Certainly email us at the Hamilton Family Health Team, and we're happy to get back to you. And there's also more information on websites like dietitians.ca, as well as at unlockfood.ca, and of course the one that Michele mentioned as well, cookspiration.ca.com,
I think.
Okay, .com.
You're close. You're close.
Now, this particular webinar, as Michele mentioned, this is our third heart health webinar. We do have other webinars happening. Before I talk about those, I do want to mention that we do actually have a Cooking for Better Health series that's focusing on heart smarts, and that starts tomorrow. It's a 3-week series. Tomorrow, the 8th of July, as well as the week after on the 15th, and again the week after that on the 22nd. It is 1 hour from 4 to 5 in the afternoon, and one of our dietitians will be doing a cooking demo for you. So we encourage you, if you're interested in that, to call or email us to register. Other sessions that we've got are the diabetes sessions. So we've got our COVID and diabetes sessions, as well as our regular diabetes sessions, eating well with diabetes and living well with diabetes. We have a few self-care with food during COVID sessions. So food and mood, your mental health, how to how to keep healthy in other ways when it comes to us, not just physically, but our brain as well. So there are many sessions that we're offering. They are on the groups and events section of our website. And if you go there, you can just click on the one that you're interested in, and that will then allow you to register and give you more information on the particular session that, that you would like.
Yeah, I just want to add that our website is www.hamiltonfht.ca. And if you go to groups and workshops, like Anastasia mentioned, to the side, there's an events calendar, a little click you can do on the events calendar, and it will show you a month at a glance of all the sessions, both the nutrition sessions, but also the mental health sessions that are being offered.
And we have nutrition groups, which are open to everyone. So I kind of touched on this in the last slide with our diabetes group. We've got our Eating Well with Diabetes and our Living Well with Diabetes groups, and those are just a 2-week group. We have our Healthy You group, which which is run in 6 classes. We've got the Cooking for Better Health, which I also talked about on the last slide. So if you're interested in any of these, you can certainly connect with your doctor's office about them, or you can connect with us directly at the Hamilton FHT website. There's email, you can register via email, you can call us, you can click on the link. There's lots of options to stay connected during this time. We encourage you to register whenever you can, because then you'll get a specific Zoom link for that, as well as resources that we send out in advance. So if you're interested in any of those, please reach out so that we can get you set up with those as well.
Well, lots going on. So now, before we open up for questions for people who participated today, we want to do a few polling questions. If you can take a minute, I'm going to launch this poll if I can. Can you see? Maybe not.
Do you want me to try launching it?
Yeah, can you try launching it?
Yep.
You got it? Good. So really,
all right.
Quick question for you. I was just saying 5 quick questions just to find out, what did you feel that you learned today? Did you have any technical issues? Because this is a new platform for all of us. Will you attend other sessions? Is your family doctor part of the Hamilton Family Health team? Yeah, and that's about it. So we'll give people a few seconds to vote. We tried to make it easy with yes and no answers, so it's quick and fast. Okay, do we want to, we can leave the polling up. Can you still see the chat questions, Anastasia?
I can, yep.
Do we want to start with some questions that people might have? If you do have questions, there is a chat box. Please feel free to type in a question and we're happy to answer and give you some suggestions. I do have a question though, Anastasia, this probiotic chart that we use all the time. So we use this all the time in practice, and the family doctors like to use it, and the nurse practitioners. So again, could you give that website to people, because it's such a popular tool that we want everyone to be able to access it?
Absolutely. So it's called probioticchart.ca. As I mentioned before, it is updated regularly. So sometimes we find products that were on there, but don't quite make the cut anymore. So they do then fall off the list. So it is worth checking back to see if to see what new evidence there might be. The other thing I like about it is that there's a filter option. So it allows you to look by a certain disease condition, and when you filter in that way, it will then show all of the products out there that are helpful for that particular topic. So it's a really, really great resource. Certainly if you have any trouble using it or figuring out how to use it or how it could be helpful for you, definitely contact your doctor's office and speak to either the doctor or the dietitian, and we can help walk you through that. Absolutely.
Great. All right.
So I actually do have a question, Michele, and it relates back to the prebiotics that you were talking about earlier. So can you give us some more information on that? Can you talk a bit more about that?
So in terms of prebiotics, so these are the foods that have the sort of nutrients needed for that gut bacteria to grow and to enhance their function. And so there's a lot of foods that we're starting to look at, like what are prebiotic foods? We know fiber is a prebiotic, but there's certain foods that are fermentable foods. Some of people might have heard about kefir, buttermilk, things like miso and tempeh, and foods that like kombucha tea that a lot of people may have heard about lately. These are all foods that have healthy bacteria and help to contribute to building that balance in the gut between the good, healthy, beneficial bacteria and the harmful bacteria that's this sort of in a fine balance together. So those are just some of the foods we're encouraging people to add to their diet. Things like sauerkraut as well is a fermentable food. Beans, so if you like the beans family, there is quite a bit of research showing that plant-based proteins have that advantage of seeming to have a positive effect on healthy bacteria. And compared to, they've done research with vegetarians and vegans, and they do show with more plant protein in the diet, it does seem to have a benefit on the gut flora. So that's a very interesting area of research, and hopefully we'll be learning more and more as this research builds. But just another reason to add things like beans, peas, and lentils to our diet. And we've known all along with healthy eating patterns that when we have those foods, it does seem to help our heart health. It definitely lowers cholesterol and seems to improve blood pressure and seems to lower overall cardiac risk, which is really what we're trying to do. So it's beans for everybody. So in terms of other fibers, I often get questions about fruits, Anastasia. So I was going to see what you would comment. When people ask you about what's the best fruit for fiber, how do you answer?
Oh my goodness, that's not easy.
I
tell
know.
them that whatever they enjoy, right? I think in my mind, some fruits do stand out as being higher in fiber. So those berries, pears, avocado. So I highlight those, but not everybody likes those fruits. So I think as long as you're getting a good variety of fruit in your day, I'm not worried about the fiber. Because the other point is, of course, like we said earlier, right, the fruits and veg, they have smaller amounts of fiber in them. And so they're not going to be your huge players anyway.
Yeah.
So certainly, yes, enjoy those fruits and vegetables, but there aren't really ones that kind of stand out. I don't know, do you have any standout fruits?
Well, that's where I use the handout. I also give people the handout and say, from here, what are the fruits that you do like? Because every little bit helps, right? So if we're trying to get people to have 2 or 3 fruits a day, and they each have 2 or 3 grams of fiber, and then, 2 cups of veggies a day, and that has a bit of fiber, it all builds.
It all adds
like you
up,
mentioned,
absolutely.
right? It all adds up. So it's all about what they enjoy. But sometimes they're very surprised to hear that things like, grapes don't have a lot of fiber, but something like blueberries have a fair amount of fiber. So people are always quite interested to learn about the differences between different fruits and vegetables, because we tend to lump them all together, but in fact, nutritionally, they may be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other questions from our chat box?
So the one question that came up was, should I take a probiotic the same way I take a multivitamin? Should I take a daily probiotic?
Yeah, well, I think you answered that so nicely in the presentation, because really probiotics have to be very specific to the issue. So it's like, when people will say to me, well, I'm on a probiotic, and I'm like, what kind? And they often have no idea of what kind or what it's used for. And they've also said to me, well, someone has recommended I should just take a probiotic. And I always say to people, well, that's like telling someone go buy a car. Which one? What kind? So we need to be very specific with probiotics, because they are like medicine. We are starting to see how they have specific functions. They help in certain areas of the body. Just like the yogurt example, if you are trying to help with antibiotic-associated diarrhea, the Inactive can be helpful. If you're trying to help with constipation, Activia with its strain of bacteria seems to have better research in that area. So I think we have to be very specific, and I wouldn't encourage a probiotic supplement until you sort of met with the dietitian and you've done a sort of an assessment of your intake to see, do we have enough probiotic or prebiotic food sources? Can we add more of those? Do you have a condition where a probiotic has been proven to offer some benefit or some relief? And that's where we could look at the chart together to decide if, in fact, if you have IBS, for example, irritable bowel, Align, for example, is one supplement that has literature, but again, it's very specific. So in a roundabout way, we'd want to talk more before we recommend anything.
The other thing I think that's always important to point out, with probiotic supplements at least, is that they're not necessarily meant to be long-term, right? And I think people think, once I start taking it, I have to be on it forever, and that's not necessarily the case. So how long you need to be taking it for, that's also a discussion that you should have with your dietitian, so that you guys can figure that out together.
And the dose, right? The dose has to be effective. So for example, Activia, the literature seems to show better benefit on irritable bowel constipation associated with IBS if there's 3 servings of Activia yogurt a day versus 1. So again, the dose of bacteria to improve that issue that you're having is really important too. So again, just another reason to have that conversation with your dietitian or your family doctor to make sure what you're taking is actually appropriate, that it actually has literature to show it works, that it shows it's safe, for example, and you're taking the appropriate amount for the appropriate length of time. Yeah. So is that it with the questions?
That is.
Okay.
Although I'm gonna give my own plug on a website. So we talked a lot about beans, kidney beans, chickpeas, lentils, and often one of the things I find is that people just don't know what to do with them. So the website I always recommend people check is pulses.org. So pulses, P as in Paul, LULSES.org. And I like this particular website because they also have not only a recipe section, but they have a filter section on it. So if you're looking for a particular type of food, whether it's chickpeas or lentils or other beans, you can filter by that way. If you're looking for a type of meal, so a dinner entree or a salad or something like that, you can also filter that way. If you have a special diet, if you're interested specifically in something vegetarian, it allows you to filter in that way as well. So beans, I think, often get, or kidney beans, chickpeas, lentils, those legumes, can be a hard sell sometimes, but there's lots of great recipes out there to help you incorporate more of them into your day.
And that's one of the reasons to maybe join our Cooking for Better Heart Health session, because our dietitian really shows ways to do magic with lentils, things you'd never think about, and they taste fabulous, and it's always a surprise. People are always impressed with how good it tastes once they try it. So that's another opportunity to learn more about how to cook with some of these foods and how to have them in your home. So I want to thank everyone for joining us for this session. I hope that you walk away with a greater appreciation of how we're beginning to learn about the gut bacteria and how many species there are and how complex it is, and how it's a whole another ecosystem that's very important and very connected with other systems in our body. And we're really just beginning to learn about this, but it does appear that what we eat is a very important factor in keeping that balance of healthy bacteria, particularly when it comes to our heart health. So we'd like to thank you for spending time with us and encourage you to join us again for some of the upcoming webinars and online groups. Okay, have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.